بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue the explanation in this tremendous treatise entitled Fataawa Hamawiyyah Kubra by the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi al-Numayri al-Mutawaffa Sanat 728, the one who died 728 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The time now is 7:11 p.m. Thursday, August the 25th, 2022, it agrees on the Taqweem al-Hijri or Tarikh al-Hijri, on the Hijri date or the Tarikh of the Hijri calendar, the Hijri date, which is now currently the 27th of Muharram, the year 2444 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. We were discussing the statement of the great Imam that the great, Shaykh al-Islam had brought and conveyed, the statement of Ibn al-Majishun. We were discussing how from the affairs, the unseen devils, how they inspire the people with perverted ideologies and perverted understandings and corrupt their minds based upon what the shayateen, what the unseen devils dictate and what they instill in the minds of the people in order to lead them astray, and in order for them to fall into all types of great atrocities that cause corruption and confusion and doubt in society in general. As we talk about, you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam, as he was bringing his evidences, we were in the midst of discussing the statement of the great scholar from Al-Madinah, Ibn al-Majishun. So notice what he said in the statement, فَلَمْ يَزَلْ يُمْلِي لَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ حَتَّى جَحَدَ قَوْلَ الرَّبِّ وُجُوهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. He says you'll find that the devils continue to dictate to them, instill in them corrupt, perverted understandings and meanings and convictions, meaning beliefs, that the devils corrupted the people's minds. He says until it led them to this point where they denied the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that on that day they will be faces blasphemy, and to their Lord they will be looking. So these evil beliefs led them to the point where they denied the greatest of all blessings, the greatest of all bliss, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows people to enter paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ja'alana Allahu wa iyyakum min ashabiha. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us and you from its inhabitants, meaning of the hereafter in paradise. But from the greatest of all ni'am that we mentioned was what, everyone? That the people will receive the greatest of physical pleasures in paradise. Also, they will attain another, rather the greatest of all blessings, which is the blessing of pleasure of the heart. As we know, in this world, a person can attain physical relief or financial stability, which is all types of outward, external blessings. But one can still be miserable in their heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant the people in paradise both. Give them external pleasures along with what? Internal pleasure. Meaning, the pleasure of the heart and the greatest of all relief. And upon that will happen when they look to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in paradise. But this ni'mah, this is the greatest of all pleasures, the Mu'tazila denied it. They rejected it. You'll find that the Mu'tazila, the deviant sect from the Muslims called the Mu'tazila, that they what? They denied this. أنكرت المعتزلة الرؤيا. That the Mu'tazila rejected the notion that what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen. They denied it, they rejected it. As we know, on the day of resurrection, all the creation are resurrected, as we discussed this on many occasions. We said the believers, bil ittifaq, in agreement, they'll see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala twice. Those who believed in Allah and the final revelation that was revealed from Allah, that those who remain firm upon that and died upon that, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us you from those who die upon that, they will see Allah twice. Son, you have to be quiet, okay? They will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi arasat al-qiyamah wa fi dar al-karama. They will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the plains of the day of resurrection. When we say the plains, meaning that everyone will be on a level plane. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the earth a different earth, where there will not be any valleys, there will not be any hills, mountains, everything will be removed. And it will be like one plane. Like one plane where nobody will be able to hide at all. So those you will find on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from those different events that will take place. From those events, as we mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will now be seen to the believers. And He will test them by that. He will test them by that on the day of resurrection. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen again for the believers in paradise. As we mentioned last class, we said that the Mu'tazila denied this. So that's clear. The Mu'tazila is your frank, clear enemy. As we know, from the aspect of knowing who you deal with, the enemy that comes to you and tells you clearly who they are the ones that give you relaxation. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? The enemy that tells you straight to your face, I don't like you. They tell you who they are. And they implement that clearly. That enemy gives you relaxation. So I know who I'm dealing with here. So the Mu'tazila deny that affair, clearly. So they're your adu sarih, arahak. They're your clear enemy and they give you relaxation. As for the Asha'ira, as we know, from the deviant sects for the Muslims entitled, or who they call the Asha'ira, play games. They say, you'll find that, as we talked about what Ibn al-Majishun said. What did Ibn al-Majishun? Let's apply, connect everything. We said that the Muslims who are upon these type of weird beliefs, or these deviant, perverted ideologies, are in a state of confusion. Fi hira, based upon what the devils have done to corrupt them with these type of deviant ideologies. Because we know, brothers and sisters, that the denial that Allah will be seen is from inspiration of the devil. From the inspiration of the devil, in which we talked about before in so many ayats. Where Allah, for example, says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعْلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيًّا عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. Right? ولو شاء ربك ما فعلوا فذرهم وما يفترون ولتصغى إليه أفئدة الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وليرضوه وليقترفوا وما هم بمقترفون. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, likewise we have made for the prophets an enemy, the devils from the human beings and the unseen devils, that they inspire one another with decorated speech. So we know from the devils that they inspire with all types of evil. And the greatest of all evil is evil beliefs and corrupt beliefs. From those evil beliefs that Ibn al-Majishun is mentioning here is that Allah will not be seen. We talked about the athar of what happened with Yahya al-Zimmi, of what has been related in the great books of Aqidah, which is called Al-Sharia, by the great Imam Abu Bakr al-Ajurri, rahimahullah. You'll find that the great Imam حامل لواء الجرح والتعديل بحق الإمام ربيع رغم ألوف أعداء السنة والحزبيين. You'll find that the great Imam حامل لواء الجرح والتعديل بحق, you'll find that he explained that other, when he said that the other is actually sahih. When he's talking about the jinn who came from the place in which he left a successor. And the jinn had came, that devil, was seen by Yahya az-Zimmi. Yahya az-Zimmi seen, he said, what are you doing here? So Yahya az-Zimmi was a person of strong iman, strong aqidah. Anybody that would have seen a jinn, they would have lost their mind. They probably would have collapsed and maybe passed out, fainted, and died. Yahya az-Zimmi stood firm and said, what are you doing here? What? And he said, oh, if I knew you was here, I would have came here. He said, what are you doing here? He said, I came here because I left a successor in the land. He said, who did you leave as a successor? He said, Bishr al-Risi. Bishr al-Risi was the one who called that Allah doesn't have names, attributes, and all types of perverted ideologies and corrupt ideas. That Allah cannot be seen. All these type of affairs were inspiration from the devil. It was inspiration from the shaitan. So these are proofs that what Ibn Majishun mentioned here is what? Is correct. He said that the devils, meaning the unseen devils, continue to inspire the human beings with these type of corrupt beliefs. He says until he rendered them in a state, they rendered them, meaning the human beings, in a state of confusion and bewilderment. That they don't know what direction to go based upon the fact that they adopted ideas that made them confused. But from them is the statement, like we just said, that Allah will not be seen on the day of resurrection. Or Allah will not be seen when they enter paradise. But we said that the people who believed this was who, everyone? The Mu'tazila, right? As we said a couple of minutes ago, the Asha'ira play games. They have rendered their portion of confusion. How, everyone? Listen to the statement they say. They say they said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now listen to the statement, it's very confusing. Now listen to this. Exactly what we just said in the ayah applies here. The Asha'ira say Allah will be seen, however, without it being directly in front or above. Bidun muqabala. They said Allah yura walakin biduni muqabala. That's contradictory. Allah will be seen, but however not being like in directly in front of you or in front of you, in the direction that's in front of you. Very confusing statement. A person that hears that, what would that be? There'll be a state of confusion. That's confusing, huh? Why do you think they say this statement? You know why, everyone? Because we talked about what is from the greatest of attributes they deny, that Allah is above. So the reason why they said the statement is based upon the fact that they deny that what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above. So that's the reason why they came with these statements. As we know, Ahl Sunnah, we believe clearly and firmly, with a firm conviction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He sees, that the servant will see Allah from above. And we also, right now, for those who truly have faith and are upon firm belief in Tawheed and Sunnah, they fear their Lord from above them. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He says, يَخَافُونَ رَبَّهُمْ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ, that they fear their Lord from above them. Right, everyone? Afwan. هُوَ الْقَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ وَيُرْسِلُ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفَظًا حَتَّى إِذَا جاء أحدهم الموت لم تفرطهم رسلنا وهم لم يفرطوا. The ayahs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, وهو القاهر فوق عباده ويرسل عليهم حفظا. That's enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book that He is the dominant one from over His slaves. القاهر فوق عباده. He's the dominant one above His servants. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in so many ayat, يَخَافُونَ رَبَّهُمْ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ. They fear their Lord from the one who's above them. Those ayat and the likes of those different ayats, as we mentioned, are all clear evidences to prove that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above. That is the belief of the people of Sunnah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the throne and He is separate and distinct from His creation. Meaning He's not mixed with them. And they are not mixed with Him. So you'll find that they make the statement, for example, أنه فوق عرشه بائن من خلقه. He's above his throne and he is separate and distinct from his creation. What do we mean separate? Meaning Allah is not mixed with the creation, nor is the creation mixed with him. Nor does Allah have attributes like the creation, even though they agree in the general meaning of the word. But they, what? In the reality, there is no what? There's no comparison, no resemblance. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight is not like the sight of the creation. The sight of the creation, from the general meaning, Allah does have sight, the creation have sight, but their sight is what? Totally different. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything. And the thing that prevents Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his sight, from burning up everything, as we'll talk about inshallah, is the hijab. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hijab of light. As it comes in the hadith of the authentic narrations, we've talked about this before. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they said, وَحِجَابُهُ نُورٌ لو كشفه لأحرق سبحات وجهه ما انتهى إليه بصره من خلقه. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that his hijab is light. If it was removed, he said the glorification of the great sight of your Lord, he said, will burn up everything in what? Everything it sees. That meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight will burn up everything based upon the fact that he sees everything. So that shows, as we mentioned, everyone, that this is what we were talking about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the throne, separate and distinct from his creation, the affirmation of Allah being above, and the ascension of Allah above the arsh. With the Ash'ariyah, these affairs all became what? Disturbed and misplaced and what? And distorted. Meaning they being changed. We said that the nusus, the text of these characteristics, for example, when the people who are upon deviation, such as the Ash'ariyah and the Maturidiyya and the likes of them, when they hear it, it's like lightning to their ears. Meaning it strikes. They can't stand it. And it will drive them crazy. They can't even tolerate it. Of what they have adopted and what's been established in their hearts based upon blind following certain individuals that have misled them. Based upon the evil madhab and the corruption of so-called Greek philosophy that crept in their beliefs, and they tried to mix it with Islam, and as a result of it, they came with this type of confusion. And what they adopted from their misguided so-called scholars of philosophy, who ascribe to Islam, but not realizing that their minds have been corrupted by falsafa, by philosophy. As a result of it, they became fully convicted by those wicked beliefs, turning away from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you'll find in these days and times, a person who's so-called Ash'ari, they will call themselves Aqidah Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, even though they denied the vision, meaning Allah being seen in the hereafter, on the day of resurrection. And when they say this very weird, confusing statements such as Allah will be seen, however, not directly in front of you nor above you, which doesn't make absolute any sense. Rather, that is a very confusing statement. And any Muslim that, if he was to be brought to Islam and he hears statements like that, that could be a reason for his apostation. That's the reason why the people of the Sunnah warn the people in general from the gatherings of these type of people, based upon the fact that from the atrocities and the perils of sitting with people who have these type of beliefs, it will inherit inside of the heart of the individual doubt. When they hear these type of statements, Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection, however, it won't be in front of you. It won't be above you either. So when a Muslim hears this type of nonsense, what comes as a result of it, like we said, it subjects them to what? Doubt. And that in doubt, what's the result of it? Apostation. This type, I think we mentioned, is said, has no type of origin of what we just discussed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yura wa lakin bidun muqabala. He's seen, however, without being in front of or in a certain direction, as they say. This has no origin, not in the kitab nor in the authentic sunnah. So they're not the people of the Sunnah, nor are they the people of the Jama'ah, meaning those who followed the first generation or the first 3 generations, that the head of them is the Sahaba. They are not from them, because this wasn't the belief of the greatest of all creation after the prophets and messengers, who are the Sahaba. For before everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we said, on the day of resurrection, He will be above. He'll be above the people. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the creation within 6 days and everything between it, and then He ascended above the Arsh. So we talked about this already. And even like we talked about from our belief, everyone, is that even when the people are in paradise, the inhabitants, when they have now taken their final abode in paradise in their places, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them salams from above them also. He will say, Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. He will give them salams, a statement, which is speech, which is from Rabbir Rahim, from a merciful Lord. So, not only will the people of paradise see Allah, they will also hear His voice. So the people, they will look to the one who created them, in addition to hearing His voice. So the believers will hear His voice. As far as the kuffar and the munafiqeen, that's something different. The people of the hellfire will hear Allah's voice. However, it will be a voice of humiliation and disgrace. There's an ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this book that Allah will address the people of hell. He'll say to them, اخسأوا فيها ولا تكلمون. May you be humiliated in it and disgraced in it, and do not speak to me. So the type of voice they will hear is a voice of what? A voice of destruction, humiliation, and disgrace. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us refuge from that. However, the people of paradise will hear the statement, which is a statement of mercy and honor. For the people of paradise, it will be Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. He says Allah will give them salams, which is a statement of honor. Statement of honor, and a statement of success, and a statement of pleasure. Can you imagine now, everyone, and everyone listening online, it's over now. Everything is done. No more sadness, no more grief, no more aging. Jazakallah khair. No more aging, no more sickness, no more ups and downs, happiness, sadness, grief. All that's removed now. Done. It's over. Those affairs that we were subjected to in this dunya, all those matters have now been removed. Even eating in paradise is not because you're hungry or because you need it. It's just all pleasure. It's muta'a mutlaqa or na'im mutlaq. A lot of people think, well, why would we eat and drink in paradise? Your father, Ibn Qayyim, even mentions this in Hadith Arwah. He said the affairs of paradise is not, people will not eat and drink because they will not eat and drink because they need it, because they're hungry or they're starving and their body needs nutrients. He said, no, they'll be eating and drinking out of mere pleasure. Just absolute pleasure. And out of absolute what? Delight. All those affairs, like we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though that's their state in paradise, they still will be above them. Allah still will be above. And He will address them, and they will hear His voice. In addition to, like we said, He will allow them to look at His face, and He still will be above them. So the affairs pertaining to Allah being above will be in this dunya, Allah is above, and on the day of resurrection, Allah still will be above, and in paradise, Allah Ta'ala is what? Still will be above. Why? Because the affair of ulu is a sifatun dhatiyatun mutlaqa. Sifatun dhatiyah, characteristic of Allah's essence that never goes away. Allah is always above. Always above His creation. Fine. But like we said, the statement of the Asha'ira is from the most confusing and most hideous of statements, to say that Allah will be seen, however it will not be from above, or will not be in front of them, where it will be above, which is absolutely, like we said, it's confusing, and like we said before, a statement that's totally incorrect. It's opposition from Kitab and Sunnah. Right. As far as the Ash'ari, as we mentioned and said, and we talked about this on many occasions, they do affirm some of the characteristics, how Ahl Sunnah affirm all the characteristics. The Ash'ari affirm some of those characteristics and they deny others. But however, one has to realize that the Ash'ari also what? They oppose Ahl Sunnah in regards to how they affirm those characteristics. So it's not just the mere fact that they agree with Ahl Sunnah in some of the characteristics, which is the characteristics of 7. As we know, the Ash'ari that they affirm how many? 7. And they play games in some of them. Anyway, as we know the poetry, it says, لَهُ الْحَيَاةُ لَهُ الْكَلَامُ وَالْحَيَاةُ وَالْبَصَرُ سَمْعٌ إِرَادَةٌ وَعِلْمٌ وَاقْتَدَرٌ. That's the 7 that they affirm. I'll say it quickly. As it says in the poetry, لَهُ الْحَيَاةُ وَالْكَلَامُ وَالْبَصَرُ سَمْعٌ إِرَادَةٌ وَعِلْمٌ وَاقْتَدَرٌ. That's the 7 they affirm. Which is life, number 1. لَهُ الْحَيَاةُ وَالْكَلَامُ. They affirm speech, however they play games in that too. We'll talk about that in a minute. لَهُ الْحَيَاةُ وَالْكَلَامُ وَالْبَصَرُ sight, سَمْعٌ إِرَادَةٌ وَعِلْمٌ وَاقْتَدَرٌ قُدْرَةٌ. They affirm life, speech, sight, hearing, intent, knowledge, ability. That's what they affirm. That's it. Even though they affirm those 7 characteristics and they play in some of them, such as speech, because the Ash'ari also believe the Quran is created. They believe the speech of Allah is created, which is another evil. But anyway, generally they affirm these characteristics. Right. The second thing that they oppose to people of Sunnah is how they affirm these characteristics. They affirm it based upon what? Relying upon what, everyone? Their intellect. Whereas Ahl Sunnah, we rely upon what? Revelation. So they rely on these affairs in Greek philosophy, which is to give glorification to the human mind over the people of the truth, which is giving glorification to what, everyone? To the text of the Kitab and Sunnah, relying upon revelation. Pure revelation. That's the difference between them. Even though they agree with Ahl Sunnah in some characteristics, which is called muwafaqatun juz'iyya, a partial agreement with the people of the truth. Not totally. So they're not from the people of the truth. And not only that, in addition to what we just said, even how they affirm it is incorrect. Because we said they affirm it based upon them relying on what, everyone? The intellect. Ahsan. G. Right, so let's keep going. Is it clear? Is everything clear so far, everyone? Right, so let's get back to Ibn Majishun. Let's go back to the great Imam Ibn Majishun that he mentioned, rahimahullah. He said, فَجَاهَدَ وَاللَّهِ أفضل كرامة الله التي أكرم بها أولياءه يوم القيامة من النظر إلى وجهه ونظرته إياه في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. طيب, he goes on to say in the statement, after we complete and explain this, we're going to go back and read it completely, so to make sure that everyone understood it properly. طيب, so he goes on to say, فجاهد والله, they rejected, I swear by Allah, the most virtuous of all honorable affairs and all delight and bliss in which Allah will give honor to His awliya. We'll talk about the meaning of awliya here. On the day of resurrection, from them looking to His face. So looking at Allah's face is the greatest of what? All honor. It's the greatest of all reward. It's the greatest of all bliss and na'im, and delight and pleasure that the people will receive. There's nothing greater than a human being looking at their Creator. There's no greater bliss than that. There's no greater bliss to look to the one who created you and to hear his voice. And to hear his voice. The people of innovation, from them being affected by Greek philosophy and based upon the dictation and the inspiration of the devils, allowed them to fall in the atrocities of rejecting this belief. And this is what the evil affairs of the devils have inspired the human beings to believe in, that Allah won't be seen, which is the greatest of all honor. So that's why Ibn al-Majishun said this statement. He said they rejected, I swear by Allah, the most virtuous of all bliss and honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant his awliya. We'll talk about the meaning of awliya here. On the day of resurrection, by looking to his face. And Allah looking at them. وَنَظْرَتِهِ إِيَّاهُمْ. And Allah looking at them.
Sit down, son. Sit down. I was just looking at the time. It's 7:42.
And it said from them, from him looking at them. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, he said in the ayah, Ibn al-Majishun, he said, فِي مَقْعَدِ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ مَلِيكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. He said, and the people, of course, of those who are close to his awliya, will be sitting the sitting of truthfulness. With who? Malik al-Muqtadir, the great king and the one who owns everything, who is all able. طيب. Notice we mentioned it said, look to what Ibn al-Majishun says in the book. What Shaykh al-Islam brought. He said they denied the greatest of all bliss, in which Allah give to his awliya. The awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not the Sufis or ad-Darawisha. As you'll find that some of the Muslims, that their definition of wali or awliya is distorted, is twisted. The awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not based upon or a specific group of people. As you'll find of certain people from the deviant sects called the Sufiya are called a group Darawisha. Darawisha are not from them. The meaning of the word awliya of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is different from the definition of those who are upon deviation, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the correct definition of the word wali, in which goes against what the Sufis are upon with their definition of wali, which opposes Allah's definition in his book. What's the meaning of wali? Who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them the greatest of all bliss, which is to look at him. What is it? Who are they? Based upon the ayat which comes where everyone is Surah Yunus, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the definition of those who he will allow to see his face, where it says in that ayah, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, isn't it not that the awliya of Allah, there's no fear upon them, nor will they be sad? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the definition of wali, which is what? Those who believe and they have taqwa. That's the definition of a wali. That's it. That definition opposes the definition of the Sufis. Fine. Those who believe and those who have taqwa, every person that believes in Allah in the last final revelation, who are upon iman in that, and are implementing that, and are fulfilling their obligations with their prayers and their pillars of Islam and all the other matters that Allah has obliged upon them to carry out and fulfill of those obligations and those duties, they are the awliya of Allah. And we talked about this in the book that alhamdulillah, we've been explaining by the other book that Shaykh al-Islam entitled Al-Furqan Bayna Awliya al-Rahman wa Awliya al-Shaytan. The criteria that distinguish between the awliya of Allah, those who are close to Allah and those who are close to the devil, which is a class we've been teaching on Saturday. Sunday. Those classes allow one to know who are the characteristics of the awliya of Allah. And those people who now want to know the correct definition and their characteristics needs to come to that class, because we are living in days where people need to know and have a distinction and awareness between who's close to Allah, who's close to the devil. And we explain this in depth and in detail to make the distinguishment between those two parties. Fine. So this is the belief of Ahlul Sunnah in regards to the awliya. Those who believe and those who have taqwa. Those meaning they fulfill their duties, and they stay away from exceeding the bounds. They are a wali of Allah. The wali of Allah with the Sufis is something different, meaning they're specific people. They're specific people, and they're the ones that are considered so-called close to Allah, where the rest of the people are not. So in regards to the lugha, or the so-called linguistic meaning with the Sufis, like we said, it's a specific people. And you'll find that al-walaya with them is inherited. That's what they said. They said al-walaya indahum bil-wiratha. So al-walaya with them is inherited bil-wiratha, which is absolutely incorrect. For example, al-walad yarithu al-walaya min abaihi wa ajdadihi. That al-walaya is inherited from his fathers and his grandfathers, even if they're the most wicked of all people. Which doesn't make absolute any sense. Even if he's one min afsaq al-fusaq. If he's the most wicked and most what? Despicable of people. That they what? Ascribe to a house in which has been established in it, as they said, meaning in their own family or their own people, that it is a house of walaya, of Allah. Such as the house of Ibn Alwan, for example. That's from the terminologies of the Sufis. Bayt Ibn Alwan. They say that these are the awliya of Allah. So it's not based upon belief, nor is it based upon applying. Oh, it's time? Somebody called me? Oh, who? Somebody would call me?
No, you gotta go call it.
Oh, okay. Now, so we call it, we'll stop it. Show them what he called it. So, al-walaya, number one, everyone realize that walaya is not something that's inherited, as the Sufis that they say. It's not something that is looked to someone specifically from their tribe or for their people or their ethnicity or what have you. However, walaya in Islam is not, like we said, by inheritance. Rather, walaya in Islam is something that's acquired. Acquired with what? Piety of Allah and belief in righteousness. And anyone can attain that from any race. So that's not based upon the definitions of what the Sufis say. Is it clear, everyone?
749.
Allah Akbar, Allah. Allah Akbar, Allah. As we mentioned, it said al-walaya, or being a wali of Allah Ta'ala, as we explained this in detail, is not a matter that is selective, meaning that you become from a person, that you come from a person that's been selected and now it's been inherited from your forefathers, or your father, or your tribe, or what have you. As we mentioned, it said, al-walaya, anyone, or any individual can attain that. If they have sound belief in what was the final revelation of Islam and the Sunnah. And in addition to that, like we said, it is an affair that anyone can attain. As far as nubuwah, as far as prophethood, or being a risala, that is selected by Allah. That's what they call nubuwah bil-ijtiba, wal-ikhtiyar. That is someone who's chosen by Allah to do that. Al-walaya, so if we want to say, and I'll break this down, making it simple. Al-nubuwah is by ijtiba. Al-walaya is by what? Is by iktisab. Nubuwah is by being selected or chosen. Walaya is what can be acquired by anyone, any individual, any person in the world, no matter what race or color. So it's in contrast to what the people who are upon deviation from the Sufis believe. So any person that fears Allah Ta'ala can attain the affair of walaya, where a person becomes close to Allah Ta'ala based upon their faith and based upon their piety and righteousness. And the closer you are to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. And the person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also defend you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry for those who harm you, or harms that individual, As we know, the hadith, as we talked about in Furqan, we talked about this in class. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Man aada li waliyan, faqad adhantuhu bil harb fi riwayah, faqad barazani bil muharaba. That whoever harms a wali of mine, then I've declared war against him. وفي رواية فقد بارزني بالمحاربة. Then he has now declared with me war. So those affairs of harming the awliya of Allah Ta'ala, we know its merits, and we know if we were to go back to the book and the lesson, everyone would know exactly what I'm speaking about. So that's what we wanted to bring to benefit the people. That Ibn al-Majishun, where he said in the statement that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give his awliya, not the awliya of the Sufis. We're talking about the awliya of the people of Tawheed and Sunnah. And those based upon their piety and their faith and their righteousness, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to enter paradise, and inshallah they will, because all the people of Tawheed and Sunnah will be in paradise. Even if some of them have to be punished and be purified of certain sins before they enter it, but inevitably that will be their home. As we mentioned and said, those are the distinctions that we wanted to mention between what Ibn al-Majishun mentioned in the statement, and we'll mention it again just to make sure that we're all caught up. It says, فَجَحَدَ وَاللَّهِ أَفْضَلَ كَرَامَةِ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَكْرَمَ بِهَا أَوْلِيَاهَا. They denied the greatest of all bliss on the day of resurrection, which is to look to his face, in which Allah will give honor to his awliya. So that's basically what we wanted to mention. So no one should get confused the definition of who's a wali of Allah and the proper definition of it, not based upon the definition of those who are upon tasawwuf. The last thing before we end the lesson is it says, وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ الصَّحَابَةِ. Those who are from the greatest of the awliya of Allah, for example, are the companions of the Messenger of Allah. They are from the greatest of the wilayah, of those who have earned the wilayah of Allah. That's the reason why you'll find that every individual who speaks bad about the companions, notice Allah humiliates them, without any exception. There's not an individual that speaks bad about the prophets, the messengers, the Sahaba. You'll notice that anyone that talks bad about the Sahaba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliates them. Why, everyone? Based upon the fact that you're speaking about those who are the greatest of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you never find individuals speaking about the companions, where they fell in that prohibition that the Messenger of Allah والسلام, clearly said in the authentic narration, لا تسبوا أصحابي لا تسبوا أصحابي. Do not insult or mock or vilify, or if you want to say disparage or defame or make mockery of or insult my companions, nor curse them or revile them. فَلَوْ أَنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ أَنْفَقَ مِثْلَ أُحْدِ ذَهَبًا مَا بَلَغَ مُدَّ أَحَدِهِمْ وَلَا نَصِيفًا. This is in the hadith, right? So verily, we know that criticizing and insulting the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any of his companions will lead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making war with you. We have never seen anyone that speaks ill about the companions, except that you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliates them. It's without any exception. I need you to stop making noises, okay? Except that you will always find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliates them. So that's the reason why we warned the people. Do not make war with these type of great individuals who's known for piety and known for their greatest efforts and their sacrifice for Islam. That if it wasn't for Allah first, and that the fact that they sacrificed, and that the fact that they left the most beloved of their places to spread Islam, none of us would be Muslim today. It was their sacrifice, and that they living off the lands that they love. Who didn't want to remain in Mecca and Medina? In the greatest of all times, where Islam became what? Became dominant in those places. And despite of that, they left Medina and Mecca for Islam to spread all over the dunya. But I'm sure if they had their choice, they would have remained in Mecca and Medina. And this is a message to us as students and the people. You'll find that they say, I don't want to come back to America. I don't want to come back to those lands. Actually, we have to have courage. Did any of the Sahaba didn't want to come and leave Mecca and Medina and spread it in the corners of the dunya? They didn't want to leave either. But they did. And they sacrificed. And as a result, what happened? We became Muslim. And if it wasn't for their sacrifice for Allah, none of us would be here today. After Allah Ta'ala and their sacrifice, none of us would be here today. So that is the first or the last thing we wanted to mention. So let's read with the statement of Ibn Majishun. Let's read completely, then we'll stop, inshallah. Fine. So let's go back. What did Ibn Majishun say? So we'll start where it says, the statement where he says, so we can read it quickly. He says, have knowledge, may Allah have mercy on you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enriched you from the burden of describing Allah with characteristics He didn't describe Himself with. Meaning He didn't leave it to your own opinions, your own emotion. He gave you clarity. He says, and in affairs that He did not burden you with knowing, which is knowing how those characteristics are. He says, بِعَجْزِكَ عَنْ مَعْرِفَةِ قَدْرِ مَا وُصِفْ مِنْهَا, due to your incapability of attaining how those characteristics are. إِذَا لَمْ تَعْرِفْ قَدْرَ مَا وَصَفْ فَمَا تَكَلُّفَكَ عِلْمَ مَا لَمْ يَصِفْ. If he did not, إِذَا لَمْ نَعْرِفْ or ta'rif, you don't know how they are, so don't overburden yourself with the knowledge that Allah did not burden you with. Nor did He try to now make it as a duty for you to know those affairs at all. He says, and if you did, how is it going to increase you in anything in obedience? And is it going to now be an affair that it will be a means for you to what? To abstain or be a deterrent from His disobedience? Then he goes on to say. So let's read it quickly. He says, as for those who deny, reject what Allah described Himself by what? Going too deep and overburdening themselves. Like the devils who came and what? Had dominated them in the earth, leaving them in a state of confusion, as it says. فَصَارَ يَسْتَدِلْ بِزَعْمِهِ عَلَى الْجَحْدِ مَا وَصَفَ الرَّبِّ وَسَمَّى مِنْ نَفْسِهِ بِأَنْ قَالَ لَابُدَّ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ كَذَا مِنْ أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُ كَذَا. We talked about this yesterday. He said, using that example or evidence by their claim upon rejecting what Allah had described Himself with and named Himself with. They rejected it by saying this type of so-called philosophical term. This is what they said. If Allah is like this, then it necessitates is this. As we talked about this last class. We talked about this yesterday, right everyone? But he says, for verily they turned away from what was clear to what became hidden. We talked about that, explained it. وَجَاهَدَ مَا سَمَى الرَّبِّ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ مِنْ صَمْتَ الرَّبِّ. Then they also rejected what Allah Ta'ala, of course, as we said, where He remained quiet from. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remain quiet from? How His characteristics are. How His characteristics are. And those affairs He did not name, meaning, of course, burdening us with knowing how He what? How He has those characteristics in the manner how they are, as we said. He said, the shayateen, the devils, continue to corrupt the people's minds and belief until it led them to reject the statement of Allah Ta'ala, which is on that day where faces will be blossoming and blooming until they know what they will be looking. He said, they continued to corrupt their minds until they rejected that Allah will be seen. So then he goes on to say, then we'll end it off, فَقَالَ لَا يَرَاهُ أَحَدٌ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. No one will see Allah on the day of resurrection. So they deny, I swear by Allah, the greatest of all honor, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will honor His awliya on the day of resurrection from looking at Him. And then looking at Him, looking at them. And then he said the ayah, of course, it's Surah Al-Qamar, and then this is the last line where it says, وَقَدْ قَضَى أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَمُوتُونَ فَهُمْ بِالنَّظْرِ إِلَيْهِ يَنْظُرُونَ. He says it has now been established that when on the day of resurrection, that at that point, the people's physical will be changed to the point where they will not die. Even the people in the hellfire. They will not die. They will continue to be what? Similar to that, the people in what? The people in paradise will also what? Not die. As we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection, as it comes in the Sahih and Bukhari, that death will be put in the shape of a kebsh. And he will be slaughtered between paradise and hell. And the people of hell will look up, and the people of paradise also look down, and they will say, "O people of hell, death no more for you." And they'll say, "Pay people of paradise, death no more for you." And the fair death will come in that form of that caption will be slaughtered. And the form it was said in order to let the people know that it will never be what? Death again. However, he said, however, the thing with the distinction of the people of paradise is that they will what? Be looking at Allah Ta'ala, whereas the people in the hellfire will not be given that honor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us protection. I will stop here. This fly is attacking me. Huh? Any questions about the lesson? The form of a kebsh. Like it says in the narration, the form of a kebsh. Kebsh is like a, I'm sure it's a kebsh. A sheep? Yeah, it's like a sheep. It says a ram or sheep. What else you said? A ram? Be put in the form of a kebsh. It says like a kebsh is like a ram. You're right. A form of a ram. No, it's in Arabic. It's kebsh with a calf. Kebsh, like a form of a ram. It'll be slaughtered, and then it will be said to the people of hell, no death. It'll be said to the people in paradise, no death. All right, we'll stop here. Any other question? Kebsh is like a ram. Anything else? I have to make wudu. You have to make wudu?
No.
You have it?
No. Wait. That's not wudu. That's not wudu.
All right. طيب استعمل صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.